helpful frame what's a helpful framework for family faith formation? So this I'm focusing on is kind of like, so how do you organize this and how do you develop this over time? Um, so we're working with parishes and we're giving them a framework so they can kind of create a plan for 3 years. And then what are some examples of family learning models? So that's kind of where I want to. So it's kind of a little bit of a survey of it, and then feel free to have questions as we go through. Okay. This is the big picture. Um, we're working with churches to help them move from what I would say over the last 40 or 50 years has been the emphasis in faith formation has been on church-centered formation. So what we do with children, youth, adults, family, parents at church, programming, activities and the rest, church-centered for all kinds of reasons. Some of them research reasons, some of those practicality in terms of people's time and complexity of life and the rest, but also for really good theological, biblical, and vision reasons. We're moving away from a church-centered formation to a formation more focused on the family at home and at church. So it's not like leaving the church behind, it's rebalancing this relationship. So I call it a focus on family-centered formation at home and in the church in the first 2 decades of life. So that's going to be, I've said it over and over again. How do we have an approach that looks at the first 2 decades of life and sees it through the lens of the family rather than age groups or classes or Sunday school? So what's the research telling us? We've done 2 studies in the last year. One was the Center for Applied Research did a study for us in the spring of 24. This was a panel of let's see, you had to have one person in your family who was a baptized Catholic parent, so could have been either parent. 1,533 self-identified Catholics. They either were expecting a child or they had a child from 0 to 18. So that was our national sample. Then all the parishes in the project, we have about 220 parishes across the country. They conducted the same kind of survey. I edited a bit, but we have 8,000 parents who took that survey. And they're parallel surveys. The most interesting thing is I'll give you the conclusion in advance. They're saying the same thing. So whether it was the 1533 national sample or the 200 parishes, what parents are saying is consistent across the board. And I think you'll find that in your own parish and church. So 4 insights, and I'm going to integrate some of the research findings. So we know Christian Smith made this just perfectly clear in 2003 or 2004 with the first book, Soul Searching. Parents are the most significant influence on the religious and spiritual outcomes of young people. There's not anything above that. They are the most important. Churches can support that. Adult mentors can support that. Our programming can support that. But it's the personality of the parent that makes the big difference. Their personal faith, their personal practice, their close, warm, nurturing parent-child relationships, their authenticity, and they're willing to share their life and story. So this one insight should be helping us reshape the way in which we see parents and families at the center of our effort, not peripheral, not watching, but at the center. Here's what we found. And this is really an affirmation of what we kind of already know, that among our parents, there's a continuity of religiosity and practice. From active believers, you know who they are, all the way through inactive believers. So we use those 4 categories. A little over a third were active believers. Now, obviously, we were doing our 8,000 were somehow parish connected because they were filling out a survey. The 1,500 or so, we would have more diversity in that group, but it's identical, literally identical within a couple of percentage points. So around a third active believers. The biggest group was the 44% who are believers, but they're occasionally involved in a parish community. So you may see them for particular events, obviously Christmas and Easter, Ash Wednesday. They come in support of their children's participation. We found that overwhelmingly. The inactive believers are a smaller percentage. That can be different from church to church. and 4% are inactive non-believers. Then we asked them, how important was the Catholic faith for you? And the same thing you ask, how important is the Christian faith, Methodist faith? 16% it was most important, 33% among the most important. Well, the good news is you put those together, you have 49% who say their faith is among the most important or the most important part of their life. That's consistent. I mean, so like when we did the 8,000 in a parish, you all know parents of children participating in programming, it runs the whole gamut. You could have people who are there every Sunday worshiping and active. You could have people who are just sending their kids and saying, it might be good for you. Who knows? So you have the whole range of people. This was really significant for us because saying your faith is important or most important also correlates with coming to worship on Sunday, correlates with participation in parish life, and then correlates with whether you talk about, have conversations about faith at home and practice your faith at home. So this perception that I'm an active believer or believer, coupled with it's most important or among the most important, that was a profile of how do we get more of those kind of people? Okay. These are the things that parents believe about their faith and their spirituality. 50, so this is a 1 to 5 scale. So the 5 is the strongly agree. So it was really interesting. This is from 57%. So a big majority of our people strongly agreed, all the way to 44%. So this is the top 10. This is a fascinating list. I mean, number 2 is like, I know this, but all the rest are relational, they're spiritual, they're personal. Like there's so much to work with in terms of parents' beliefs about faith and about their spiritual life. So they're hardly unconnected, or matters of faith and spirituality are not important to them. We found just really the opposite. 2, the primary way which Catholic identity becomes rooted, or Christian identity becomes rooted in Christian and children's lives, are the day-to-day religious practice. This, underline this, put it on neon lights. It's the day-to-day religious practice. Because we have about an hour or 2 of their attention every week, this is where faith formation either happens or doesn't. It's in the daily habits of faith at home. So to raise children to understand and carry on the family's religion, parents need to practice their own faith for its own sake and as role models for their children. Over time, the research says children will learn, absorb, and embrace their own version of that faith almost unconsciously, which means you're immersing them in it, they're socialized into it, they're experiencing it. You all know what happens when that's not true. So I'm talking to Catholic parishes, and they do their first communion like in 2nd or 3rd grade. And I always say, if you're spending the first 3 or 4 weeks of your preparation program teaching children the Our Father, you know you have a problem. Because that should be happening where? At home. Heck, if you go to Mass, on a regular basis, you're going to experience the Our Father every time you go to Mass. I mean, but that just gives you the profile of it. It's right there in the liturgy. Okay. Kara did this research, and I thought this was really fascinating because it goes a little bit deeper. They took all the data and they did some more analysis of it. These 5 practices were statistically significant predictors of a parent saying their child was enthusiastic or positive about being Catholic. Okay, so these 5, 3 of them are Bible, and these are Catholic parents. I mean, if they were Southern Baptist, I would get that, right? But so the Bible is really central here. Reading the Bible as an adult, encourage my children to read the Bible. And then faith and spirituality, you'll see a thread in all these research studies. Family conversations, talking about faith and spirituality in everyday life is just the bedrock. And then celebrating rituals and sacraments. The more frequently a family does those things, the more likely children are being positive about their faith. I just thought that was really perceptive, and this validates that it's the day-to-day religious practices that happen. A parent who said their family regularly talks about faith and spirituality, I love this, is more than 4 times more likely than a parent who said their family never does to say their child is positive about being Catholic. Talking about faith. Now, Parents don't get a DNA, chromosome that gives them gives the ability to talk. They need to be taught how to talk about their faith. Ah, churches support parents in helping them talk about faith at home. How do you do that? And the other probabilities are the same for rituals, reading the Bible as a family, encouraging children to read the Bible. So these things make a huge difference, and it should kind of give us our, in quotes, curriculum for how we want to work with parents. Okay, 3. Family is the primary community where Christian faith practices are nurtured and practiced. So that this comes as no surprise. What's so important is that raising children is a practice-centered process, not a didactic teaching program. So whenever we had, like a lot of the churches I work with, say, well, we're going to teach parents how to teach their kids at home. And I think, no, no, you're not. You're going to teach parents how to live their faith at home. And in the process of living those faith practices, children will be immersed in the Christian way of life. But they're not going to run classes at home. Ugh, not a chance. What are the practices? This will come as no surprise to you that these are the ones that come up over and over. Parents say it, the research says it, the in-depth studies of families say it. Bible, prayer, service, eating together as a family, which is not just, it's not about the eating together. It's not about the eating, it's about being together. Because eating together is a context where all kinds of good stuff can happen. Family conversations, talking about faith. You notice how recurring the same themes are, right? Ritualizing, celebrating holidays and church year feasts and seasons. I mean, like I tell churches, if you can't get families to do something in Advent and Lent, close the parish down. I mean, because those are the big windows, aren't they? I mean, so to do something with Lenten practices is just so central. Moral instruction, and then being involved in a faith community and participating regularly in Sunday worship. That's the curriculum, if you will, of practice. We ask parents those things. Does it look familiar? This is the ranking of how much they did these things. So this is 1 to 10. These are the top 10 of like a list of about 25. And then when we ask the same questions of the 8,000 parents, where I put an X, it was in their top 10. So this is kind of the content that we really want to work with, I think. And then 4, focus on relationships. The quality of a parent's relationship with their young people and parenting style make a huge difference. So what kind of relationships? Warmth and love, the balance of firmness and expectations with religious flexibility, the desire for continuity with children able to think for themselves, talking with their children about religious matters during the week. So this conversation piece is just woven through. Authoritative, meaning firm with flexibility, as opposed to authoritarian or permissive or uninvolved. They maintain and enforce high standards and expectations of their children. And then they listen more and preach less. I can't tell you how important that comes up over and over again. Listen more, preach less, conversations that are more youth-centered. This is the other shocker. We ask parents, do you think you're doing a good job? And how important is it to be a parent? Because you talk to church professionals a lot of times, parents don't really care. The rest, well, 36% said they were doing an excellent job and 44% very good. These were in both surveys. So that's like, if you add up the numbers, that's 90% given an excellent or very good. We asked, how important is it? Well, 94% said it was the most important, or one of the most important things as a person. So parents think they're doing a good job. So to tell them we're doing a workshop to help you, to correct you as a parent is not ever going to work, because that's not their perception. But secondly, being a parent is really important to them. And so these are, again, good things to build on. And these are the things that they do as parents. I won't run through the whole list, but again, 1 to 5 scale, 62. No, this is 1 to 4 scale. Very much, almost 2/3 said they encourage their children, cultivate a warm, loving relationship, engage in positive communication, all the way down to like the number 12, I think was 40% and higher. So it's a pretty good list of top 12. So that's all in the slides, but that like parents do things that reflect how important it is for them to be a parent and express their satisfaction about being a parent. It's really interesting, I think. And then we asked them in the 8,000 surveys what they were interested in help with. Look at the first one, discussing tough topics. Like there's no surprise here, right? Tough topics with my children, learning to listen to them, screen time and social media. What a shocker. Um, Being involved with my children is serving, developing their strengths, managing time and balancing commitments. Um, and there's more, but you kind of get, and this is the one I was most interested in. Oops, come back here. Where'd they go? Excuse me for a minute. I want to get that slide back. That these two here, growing in my parent relationship with Jesus and growing in my understanding and practice of the Christian Catholic faith. I thought that was so interesting. It was in the top 10 list. If they want to grow, how we address that and how we respond to it, that's our challenge. There's just a lot to work with. I mean, when I present this to the parishes in our project, I think people are kind of stunned a bit, like, whoa, like, yeah, it's a more positive picture than the stereotypical view of parents and family. They're much more open. There's a lot to work with. They want you as a parish church leader to address their concerns, but they want you to focus on them, not on programming, but on them. I think that's important. Okay. So far, so good. So, what's a helpful framework? I'm watching my time here. That's the shift. What does that shift look like? I think this is the challenge and the opportunity. Very few churches I've encountered have a seamless, continuous approach from birth to graduation from high school. It's more start and stop, and there are gaps oftentimes. And so the goal of what we're doing with our Lily Endowment Project is to say, how do you develop continuous, seamless, ongoing faith formation from birth in developmentally appropriate ways all the way through these 4 stages of life that starts through the lens of the family. It's also developmentally appropriate for that child or teenager, but it's through the lens of family. How do we develop a family faith formation plan? So whether it's my focus is children and I need to build this out, my focus is adolescence, my focus is lifelong. I think thinking about these 2 decades as a seamless approach, how do I get to that point? So I think that's our first big insight. And then these 6 ways of forming faith of the family comes right out of the research, literally, but also our vision for family faith formation. Forming the faith of families at home, forming the faith of the family in the parish. And by that, I mean how we become more family centered and family involving in all the church ministries. What's it like on Sunday morning? Are families engaged or are they just watching? Are there roles for families within the liturgical ministry of the parish or the church? When we do events and gatherings, do we engage families consciously and intentionally? Do we have a lot of age group programming that can be transformed into more family programming? That kind of thing. Equip parents with practice and skills for parenting. They're not going to learn how to have family conversations, how to encourage unless we actually teach them. So how do we provide workshops, webinars, resources, tools, support groups to help them do that? And they're not going to learn, because they're a parent, they're not going to know necessarily how to be a faith former of their children or teens. So how do we encourage their faith growth so they can share that authentically with their children? How do we then also provide the skills that they need in order to engage in reading the Bible, praying together, etc.? And then learning for the entire family, that's the family learning piece. How do we work with the whole family together in family learning programs? And then lastly, how do we connect them intergenerationally with all the other generations in the church community? So that's our framework. And we think that can give you, like, for every stage, I can't go back. Oh, here it can, right there. At every stage, young children, grade school, middle school, high school, those six come into play. So we're trying to encourage all of these six practices at each stage. And so what might that look like? So this is the kind of the chart we're working with, if you will, with parishes. Um, so I have an example. I took birth to six because in so many Catholic parishes, this is not attended to. Even though you have baptism and people bring the children to be baptized, you often don't pick them up again until what? Grade one. And so you miss, I think, five of the most important years of the life cycle in terms of formation, right? So what would it be like if you had a plan, same six elements of the framework applied to this stage of life, 0 to 5, 0 to 6, and you thought about what you did every 6 months with those families. So you know when the child's born. So this is just a little bit of like record keeping. Like I tell Catholic parishes, well, you know when they're baptized, so it's not a secret when they go to 6 months. Like So this is just like use your records. Um, what would you like if every 6 months we delivered to them developmentally appropriate resources, skills, tools, videos, audio, whatever, that would help them develop the faith of their children and the whole family? So things like, so think about that over those 5 years. Like a monthly, like what would you like to do, a monthly or quarterly, whatever you want to do, or every 6 months? Newsletter with a website page of activities for the whole family and age appropriate activities for each of the 5 years. A big Bible story every month. So that, like, in these 5 years, you could actually develop, oh, I don't know, 40 or 50 big Bible stories that when children then come into more what I'll call formal learning programs, they bring something to the table. I mean, so how hard, like by 5 or 6 years old, you should at least have met the Good Samaritan and Noah and a couple of people like that in your journey. That's all done at home because you can't bring out those kids for programming necessarily, right? I mean, you might do godly play. If you do that, terrific. But families sharing the big Bible story with a big Bible book at home or website, that'd be terrific. So Bible stories, prayers, movie video suggestions, family activities, storybook of the month, all those kind of great things. And you're curating this. You don't even create this material. Milestone activities. So you celebrate those transitions or rituals of early childhood, the birthdays and baptism anniversaries and first prayers and entry to preschool, all that kind of good stuff. A welcome to the season celebration kits. Like, I'm not going to assume families know what Advent is. So here's your Advent celebration kit. Here's your Lenten celebration kit. Here's your Holy Week celebration kit. Here's your Easter season or Pentecost celebration kit. I might do some parish programs to support that, but this is all for the home. And just to do a children's storybook of the month. I mean, that's so easy to do with age appropriate suggestions, books that focus on values, morals. I mean, children's storybooks, they're so colorful, they're so value oriented. But parents don't have time to go out and look for those. But, a couple of checks at the American Library Association and a couple other sources. Story Path, there's a website that Union Theological Seminary in Virginia did that's back again. It went kind of silent for a while, but I just got news that they've kind of come back online. They correlated that with the Sunday readings, and so there's just a lot of resources. But accompanying parents and young children in those first 4 or 5 years when you can't see them regularly at church for programming, maybe on Sunday, this would be a great bonus. Okay, let's move on. Forming faith in the parish and intergenerational. What would we like to connect parents at baptism with a mentor from the parish community? Think grandparents. To accompany them. It's kind of their support system. In Catholic parishes, we have children's liturgy of the word, where and you might call it children's sermon and the rest, but it's really the Sunday readings for especially for the 4 and 5-year-olds more than the younger ones. A welcome to Sunday Mass experience, coming for us coming back to Sunday worship. You might have been off for a few years. How to welcome back. Parish dinner, maybe quarterly with babysitting, seasonal arts festival. These are just ideas. And so you can add to them as you want. And then equipping parents, whether it's skills for parenting or being faith formers. I just thought across the life cycle, wouldn't it be great if every new stage comes and we did a welcome to a new stage of life? Workshops, webinars, resources, faith forming activities that are now going to be important at this stage. Maybe a parent enrichment webinar occasionally, monthly, quarterly, whatever. A retreat, half day or day for parents. Just figure out, do a little VBS kind of thing for the kids while they're there. But even a half day retreat just for parents. Take the morning, Saturday morning off or Sunday afternoon off, whatever it might be, and just a retreat experience. And then parent support groups. Just ideas. So, but like I'm using the 6 faith forming elements to begin to program for each of the 4 stages of family life. So as I'm working with churches, I'm saying you can go deep, meaning go down. Come back here. Go down the column, meaning I'm focusing on young children and I want at home, parish, parent, family, intergenerational. Or you can go across. So like a parenting workshop at each stage of life is something that cuts across all the life stages. So we have a parent education focus that we have 4 different parent education programs, having a new child, your child starting school, middle school, high school. So as I'm working with them, I'm saying your ideas can fit into just one, or your ideas can fit across all 4 or 3 or 4 stages. And then what are learning models for families? So we did some interesting research last year. And we discovered these basically 4 different approaches churches were actually using. So some use family learning as their primary model of faith formation for families with children through middle school. Not so much into high school because that means life changes, but up through middle school and certainly through grade 6. So even if you don't go to grade 8. And we found families, churches and parishes were doing this monthly, some doing it twice a month, and some do it actually every week. I'll give you some examples. And then some integrate family learning with their age group programming so that some weeks is age group, some weeks is family. And within Catholic parishes, it's easy to integrate that with sacramental preparation for First Communion, etc. And then some just do it seasonally. They don't have primary integrated, but over the course of the year, they kind of focus on this is a whole family learning experience. Church year seasons are really easy to do. Some do a fall, a winter, and a spring. And then some are just what I call kind of just really focused. They might do a workshop, like a family skills workshop, or a retreat, half day, family small groups or family clusters. Lots of bigger parishes will organize family small groups or clusters because it's too many people to bring together in one spot. And then vacation Bible school, but a family vacation Bible school. So, there's so many versions of that. It might be a grandparent-grandchild vacation Bible school, which is going to be a lot of fun because both of them have time. People in the middle, the parents don't have time. Or just integrating into a vacation Bible school schedule, regular whole family activities, maybe in the evening a couple of times. Like you can do all kinds of versions of this. But all of these take the family's role as central, whether it's primary or integrated, seasonal, or what I'll call more focused kinds of things. They all use, I think that everybody uses a very similar process that they then tweak, but oftentimes for family learning, it'll start with a shared meal. And it's not just to feed people, because it's going to be a 90-minute to 2-hour learning experience. It's also over the shared meal, you can do a lot of community building. You could do your opening prayer. You can do a little faith formation. You can do something that's more visual. So the shared meal, and this is where you model how to do family conversations. A shared prayer experience, and then a family learning experience on the whatever the topic is that applies to all of the ages in the group. So if you have families with young children, great. Now, obviously, you can start. I've done family learning where we've had 4 and 5-year-olds, which has been great. And we usually they'll share this number three with everybody, and then we'll have a breakout just for preschool because the level of intensity and the rest has to be developmentally appropriate. So this is a whole topic. It's usually art, music, video, something that all kids would resonate with. And then for in-depth learning, you've got a couple of choices. Sometimes you could do a family learning together with activities. And if the content works, so usually church year content works like Advent or Lent. You can do things that just everybody can enter into, no matter what age you are, because it's more experiential. Parallel learning is probably the most common, where we have something for young children, and then maybe the early grades, the later grades, and middle school. So at that point, they'll break out into those three or four groupings, and then parents have their own track. And then learning activity centers. So I've done a lot of those. You want to teach prayer, maybe set up 6 or 8 learning activity centers, and over the course of 90 minutes or an hour, families get to 2 or 3 of those to experience that form of prayer. And then a closing family activity that, what do we learn and how are we going to do this back home? I mean, the whole goal is to equip people to go back home and do this. So you're modeling what you want people to do back home. That's those kind of movements. So it's kind of like together, and then perhaps in different developmentally appropriate ways to learn, and then together again. So it's kind of a sandwich. Here's a primary model that a lot of churches I know use. This is their keynote for the month is week 1, their 2-hour family session and gathering on a theme. Week 2 is at home. So, you're not fighting, oh, I got to get them out every week. They don't want to come out every week, blah, blah, blah. The whole litany. So 2-hour intensive, and then here's what to do at home. This material could be on a website. It could be printed when people get it at the family session, but it's something to go deeper and practice what you started learning. And in week 3, age group learning, where you had people coming back, and you'll be in tracks. So younger children, different ages, grades put together, and even parents. And then week 4 is back home again. So it's that kind of blend of together at home, together kinda, and then at home. There's so many versions of this. I just use them as an example to say this is the way some churches put it together. This is integrated. So you don't want to give up your weekly classes. They seem to be working okay. Right. So week 1 to 3, it's age group learning. And the week 4, we do it together as a family. 5 to 7 is age group. Week 8, we do it together family. A lot of programming oftentimes is organized into themes or topics for age groups. The family learning can be on the same topic, or it can be church year content, whatever. But in a month, children and teens have their age group learning as well as a family learning experience. And you can vary this, in 100 different ways. So that was a tsunami of information. So I'll stop sharing. But it gives you a little bit of a sense of research is pointing us this way. We've already been leaning into this in terms of our vision for faith formation to be more communal, community-centered as opposed to age group or in grade level centered. But then how do you do that? And I think thinking about the first 2 decades of life and how we're continuous and seamless in those first 2 decades, and then those 6 elements give us kind of a framework to kind of build on that. And then how do we integrate some whole family experiences at church where they can be experiencing things together, and we can be modeling and teaching what we want to see them do at home. And that, for me, the benefit of family catechesis, it actually demonstrates the kinds of experiences we want them to have at home. You can't just, even as good as a little YouTube video on how to pray, praying together, guided by one of us at a program, just builds the link back home. So